أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين سيما الحجة بغية الله الأعظم روحي وأرواحنا له فداء واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So, just to put an end to the discussion about the importance of actions compared to knowledge and faith, because I get the question a lot, Sheikh, now why are you saying or telling people that knowledge is not that important or faith is not that important? Why are you promoting ignorance? First and foremost, I'm not promoting ignorance. I'm just saying that we should give or ascribe some sort of a value to actions as well and behavior as well, because of the value of faith. Not because actions are greater in value, but because there's only one way to actually strengthen our faith, which is the most solid way, or the most, the most secure way to do that is basically to act upon it, to regulate our behavior first and foremost. As I mentioned yesterday, it's because we as human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us with a foundation and a fitrah. You don't have to add something to human beings in order for them to find an attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, they have it. They have it in their fitrah. That's why you see Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, in a beautiful narration, he states something beautifully. He says, اجتناب السيئة أولى من اكتساب الحسنة. To abstain from bad deeds is more important than doing the good deeds. Why? Because you have everything as a human being, everything resides within you. The structure, in order for you to find an attachment for the hereafter, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, resides within you. Nobody needs to add something to your soul and your heart. You have everything. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks to His Prophet in the Holy Quran, what is it He says? He said, you're not an authority. وَلَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُصَيْطِرٍ. You're not here to add something to their existence. They're existent. Have everything they need. It's there, the structure is there. The only thing you need is just to get rid of these misconceptions that exist about a lifestyle, and a person here will be healthy. The majority of our youth, they're healthy. You just need a balanced diet, a healthy lifestyle, and that's sufficient for you. But Sheikh, what about if people have doubts? Then you give them medicine. Just like a person who's sick. But do you prescribe medicine for every youth in the society because of that? Because you'll find a person who's sick? Obviously not. If a person has doubts, yes, you refer him to a book or two to solve his issue. But that doesn't mean that you have to prescribe medicine for everybody in that society. No, they just teach them how to have a balanced lifestyle, a balanced diet. That's it, that's sufficient. Work out a bit, yeah? And you will be healthy. No extra effort is needed. No extra effort. And you see the exact same thing with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the books we have on kalam and theology and so on and so forth. You think the Prophet, he wrote them? He couldn't write them? Obviously he could. How did he speak Islam to people? How did he convince people? Through the fitrah. There was a person once, he came from a tribe. This tribe was a very special tribe. So they had this etiquette in that tribe that, look, when guests they come, you massage their feet. So this guy, he showed up at the Prophet's house and he put up his feet right next to the face of the Prophet. And some of the companions that were there, they were like, he's disrespecting the Prophet. So they wanted to take him out to, do something to him. And the Prophet said, no, hold on. No. He comes from a tribe where it's a custom. They do that. So they massage people's feet. They get the feet of the guests, especially if they traveled a long way. Just like we see in Arba'in, when you walk from Najaf to Karbala, the beautiful people that stand there to serve the Zawar of Imam Hussein. So this tribe, they had the same etiquette. They had the same culture. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he rolled up his sleeves and he started massaging the man's feet. And he said, so what's your question? He said, look, if you can convince me about Islam, tell me about Islam. Not only I will convert, I will go back to my tribe and tell them about Islam, and they will all convert to Islam as well. The Prophet ﷺ, he explained it in the most simple way. Most simple way. Oh, we believe in one God, I'm His messenger. Very simple. There's something called the hereafter. You will be held accountable for your actions and so on and so forth. Very simple. Not philosophical discussions or theological arguments, this argument, the designer argument, no, none of that. The person he accepted, he said, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. I want to convert. He recited his Shahadatain, he went back to his tribe, they all became Muslim. That's simple. That's simple. If a person has doubts, you give them a book or two, you answer the doubts. But don't start filling the minds of the youth with doubts. That's what we do. When we teach them Aqaid, you know what we do? All the doubts they didn't even think of. We start like creating doubts in their minds in order for us to solve it afterwards. You know what it's like? That's like going to the doctor and he does something for you to become sick, to prescribe medicine for you afterwards. And why are we like that? Why are we like that? But Sheikhna, we need to give them some knowledge, inform them, right? No, not always. Regulate their behavior and they will seek the knowledge themselves. Imagine going to the doctor with this mentality. Be like, look, I'm not gonna consume this medicine that you prescribed for me before I've studied medicine, so I know the effect of this medicine on my body. The doctor will be like, you know what? When you die, I'm gonna pour this medicine on your grave. Yeah? Now you have it. That's what you get. So why is it we have this mentality, unfortunately? Information needs to be digested. Our actions digest the information. Ibn Sina, one of the great philosophers, yeah? So was it because he didn't care about science or the Quran or nothing like that? You know what he did every time he couldn't solve a problem? Solve a problem, like something related to knowledge and science. He said, I went to the masjid to pray 2 rak'ah to solve my issue. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would pave the way for me every time. In other words, Allah created the capacity for this philosopher because of what? Because he went through the books to find his answer? No, sometimes he went to the masjid just to find his answer. That creates capacity for a human being. That you're actually able, you do something, you digest the information, when you digest the information, you grow stronger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that capacity, He will teach you yourself. You don't have to do more than that. And the same applies to love as well. We're created with a fitrah. Trust me, a lot of the youth, they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They love the hereafter. Don't destroy them by feeding them with information, because what do? So okay, I gave him some information, he didn't act upon it, let me give him more. That poor guy becomes the donkey where you're putting books on his back. It's going to be heavy. Yeah? Don't do that. Don't do that. The same applies when it comes to love and attachment as well. There was a convert once, he came to our masjid, he converted to Islam. So I asked the brothers, just to see like the mentality in our community, how the mentality is like. So I was like, what should we do from here? I give him a book on theology. I said, you want to destroy him from the beginning, don't you? Yeah? You want to ruin his life? I taught him how to pray. I taught him how to pray. Simple. Do your wajibat. Simple. Stay away from muharramat. Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, when he speaks about spiritual wayfaring in his 40 hadith, in the first hadith, he says the only way to achieve lofty positions in your spiritual wayfaring, that is through following that which is wajib and abstaining from that which is haram. In other words, it starts with your behavior, not your knowledge. Not your knowledge. You don't need to study anatomy to be a part of the national team or be chosen for the national team. No, you have to work out. You have to strive. Then you can be a part of the national team. Not through books. You can study as many books about football as you want to. You're not going to be a football player. You have to go to the field, work out, strive. The same applies to this as well. So, respected brothers and sisters, and especially dear future parents, because sometimes I see parents, they're like, no, Sheikh, now, I want my daughter to understand the concept of hijab before she starts to wear the hijab. You know what? Tell her, apply the same mentality, same principle of yours in other aspects of life. So when she's 4 years old, 3 years old, she walks into the kitchen and she takes some cooking oil and start drinking it, be like, no, no. Because she don't know how much it harms her, I'm not going to stop her. Let her be comfortable. Do that. Be consistent. Why not consistent? Why are you forcing your children to eat healthy, for example? Why are you putting cartoons? They didn't choose the cartoons that you're putting on the TV. They didn't choose it. But subhanAllah, as soon as it comes to the religion and 2 or 3 wajibat, everybody becomes like, no, no, no. They have to understand and become philosophers first. You don't do it in other aspects of life. So why not consistent then? Let them hurt themselves. Why? Because they don't know how much cooking oil will hurt their body if they start drinking cooking oil. Let them have it. Nobody thinks like that, respected brothers and sisters. Nobody. Then be consistent. When it comes to the religion, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that something is wajib, it's because of our own benefit. It maximizes our own happiness, our own success as human beings. Not like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to gain something out of it. When He tells us something is haram, even though that you might not understand it right here and right now, you'll see the effects of it. If not in this world, you'll see it in the hereafter, for sure. So start regulating their behavior before anything else. And this is not a religious discussion. I'm not promoting ignorance. Knowledge tells us that we have to do this. Knowledge tells us that we have to create the capacity first and foremost, in order to be receptive to a lot of kinds of knowledge that exist out there, a lot of information that exists out there. I gave you a scientific example yesterday. I'll give you examples from the ahadith today. It's clear. And even if you're a non-Muslim, if you're an atheist, you want to maximize your happiness, won't you? You want to improve your intellect, won't you? Yeah. Strive. Simple. Everybody believes in that. But they should. Why? It's proven. Listen to this beautiful narration from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He narrates it from Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So when thousands of years ago, thousands before the marshmallow experiment, study and research and all that, yeah? What is it that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he said? إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِنَافِعٍ. It's not in your benefit. أَن تَعْلَمْ مَا لَمْ تَعْلَمْ. That you seek knowledge about that which you don't know of. وَلَمَّا تَعْمَلْ بِمَا قَدْ عَلِمْتَ. If you don't act upon that which you know of. And then he continues, إِنَّ كِثْرَةَ الْعِلْمِ لَا تَزِيدُ إِلَّا كِبْرًا. If you keep adding knowledge, increasing your knowledge without acting upon it, it will increase nothing for you except for arrogance. That's it. إِذَا لَمْ تَعْمَلْ بِهِ. If you don't act upon it. Nothing but arrogance. What is it that we said yesterday about shaitan? Was it because of their lack of knowledge or arrogance? He said you will come like shaitan as well. You have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot of information, but it's not going to be in your benefit. It's not going to be in your benefit. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ قَلِيلَ الْعِلْمِ. Just a small portion of knowledge, يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى كَثِيرِ الْعَمَلِ. Just a small portion of knowledge takes a lot of actions. You should strive. Now you have a small portion of knowledge that's sufficient for you. Strive upon it. I had a teacher once, you know what he did? He traveled 400 kilometers because he was studying in a hawza in the northern part of Iran. So he traveled 400 kilometers to a mosque in Qom, where Ayatollah Bahjah rahmatullah alayhi used to lead the prayer. So he went there with his friend and he said, you know what? I have this question that I want to ask Sheikh Bahjah about. So we went there the first time. Sheikh Bahjah, he rejected. He refused to answer him. So he said, Subhanallah. Second day he came as well, and Sheikh Bahjah, he rejected him again after the prayer. He didn't answer his question. He was like, maybe it's because he got a bit old. He can't hear what I'm saying. So he went closer to him. The third day he went closer to him and he said, Sheikhna, I've traveled 400 kilometers just to ask you a couple of questions, yeah? Can you give me a couple of seconds? He turned around and he looked at him. He said, Sheikh, let me ask you something. You traveled 400 kilometers to ask me a question. He said, yes. He said, did you act upon everything you know of since you traveled so far to ask me a question? Everything you knew before you traveling 400 kilometers. Have you acted upon every single thing? He said, no. He said, why are you traveling 400 kilometers to ask me a question if you haven't acted upon the knowledge you have already? Why? After a couple of years, the teacher of mine, he moves to Qom, becomes a teacher in the Hawza. Him and his friend, they went to the masjid. His friend laughed and he said, why is it you don't ask Sheikh Bashir questions anymore? He said, because that one answer was sufficient for me for the next 30 years. For the next 30 years, I don't need to ask more questions. Why? Because there's so much knowledge that I haven't acted upon. Why is it that I keep asking questions all the time? In another narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Man amila bima alima kufiya ma lam ya'lam. The one who acts upon that which he knows of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make that sufficient for him. In other words, he would know of that which you don't know of. He creates the capacity and Allah gives him the knowledge, basically. Just by you acting upon that which you know of. You want knowledge? It's not always through the books. Sometimes act upon the knowledge that you already have and knowledge comes. That itself is sufficient. That itself is sufficient. So now's the question. What action is it that we should start with? Yesterday we mentioned seeking forgiveness or repenting, right? But before that, there's another thing which is related to the concept of seeking repentance as well, which is very important to mention. And that is the discussion about habits. You see, we have so many narrations about habits, but unfortunately, it's a discussion that is very neglected in our society, in our community, and it's mostly focused on, you'll find it in Western literature, you find a lot of it. 7 atomic habits and so on and so forth. But you see, Ahlul Bayt 1,400 years ago, they explained to us what to do with habit, how to deal with habits, why it's important for us to have the strength to break habits as well, and what kind of habits we should adopt for ourselves. We have so many narrations about it. And why it's important, you see, because we as human beings, we're slave of our habits. We find an attachment to that which we are used to as well. And that's why it becomes a habit for us. So our behavior is regulated by what? Our habits. But unfortunately, I see a lot of youth, they can write down all sorts of stuff. Before the exam, they write everything down. But one thing I don't see amongst our youth, having a list over the different habits they have. So how are you going to deal with them then? That's one of the most important exercises for you to change a habit. List your habits first and foremost. Write down your habits, the good ones and the bad ones. And even if you don't have bad habits, find a good one and break that as well. Yes, you should find the strength to be resilient. You should find the strength to break a habit, improve it. Let's say you have a good habit, you recite Ziyarah Ashura every single day. That's a good habit. Add something to it. Break that habit. Improve it. But find the strength to break your habits first and foremost. That's very important. In another narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen, he states, أَفْضَلُ الْعِبَادَةِ غَلَبَ الْعَادَةِ. The most honorable form of worship is that you can overcome your habits. Find that one habit. Don't let these 10 days pass by without finding one single habit, not breaking it. And I don't care, even if it's a good one, break it. Break it for a habit that is better than that. But have the strength to do so. Because if you want to establish an Islamic lifestyle and you're not able and you don't have the strength to break your habits, then when you are fed with all sorts of information and you create bad habits for yourself, you'll be like, Sheikhna, how to deal with it? Then I can sit here, speak about the prayer, the fast, how to become spiritual, this and that. You won't be able to achieve none of it. Why? You're stuck in that one habit. You're stuck in that one habit. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, he refers to it to one of the most honorable forms of worship, that you have the strength to do what? To break your habit. In another narration, he states, بِغَلَبَةِ الْعَادَاتِ الْوُصُولِ إِلَى أَشْرَفِ الْمَقَامَاتِ. If you want to achieve the most honorable positions and stages as a human being, بِغَلَبَةِ الْعَادَاتِ, and overcome your habits. You should have the strength to break those habits. And that is related to the concept of what? Of Tawbah as well. Because what is Tawbah? Tawbah is basically making that U-turn in life. And sometimes that which we seek repentance from is a bad habit. The two things go hand in hand. Now you tell me, how much don't we have in our literature, in our hadith, in the Quran, in the hadith from Ahlul Bayt about repentance and seeking forgiveness? So much. It's all related to the concept of what? Of habits. But this is more clear. And this is exactly what sets us apart from other living creatures on this planet. Why? Because as human beings, we're not only driven by our natural instincts, our animalistic instincts, like animals, for example. We have a free will to look at something. Our intellect tells us, look, this is not good for you, yeah? And yes, there might be some pleasure in it, but you're going to damage yourself, you're going to hurt yourself if you continue. And then we have the strength to quit our habits. No, animals, they just act upon their instincts. But we as human beings, we have intention, just like holy month of Ramadan. Our instincts are telling us, look, you have to eat, you have to drink, but we abstain because of a greater purpose, of a greater goal, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's exactly what sets us apart. That distinguish human beings from other living creatures. How are we going to expect to achieve spiritual and lofty positions, yeah, if we're still in the same stage as sheep, goats, and I don't know, cows, and I don't know what, following our instincts 24/7, slaves of our habits? How are we going to expect that? In fact, it lies within the definition of a human being that your value is defined by what? Your ability to change something within your heart. That starts by breaking habits. That you have the strength to break a habit. Or else you're not going to make the U-turn. You can't seek repentance. You can't seek repentance. Listen to this narration. لا تكن ممن يرجو الآخرة. Don't be amongst the individual that seeks the hereafter بغير عمل. Without striving, without actions. ويرجي توبة بطول الأمل. And they delay repentance because of long hopes. They have hopes. Say, no, inshallah, there's still time. One of the reasons why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he tells us to visit graveyards once a week, but that's because of this. Because we tell ourselves all the time, there's always time. But when you go to a graveyard, you find out there's no time. We're not promised tomorrow. How? You go there, you see the graves of infants. Right? Allahu Akbar. You see the grave of young men, young women, yeah, teenagers, people that are younger than us. They weren't promised to live. So you start thinking to yourself, and the contemplation starts, the thinking process starts here. And you look at these graves and you'll be like, I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised tomorrow. You find people that are older than you, but you also find people that are much younger than you. In other words, you're in between. You're not promised tomorrow. Why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, what is it? He says, Yawm amal, today you can act, wala hisab, and you won't be held accountable. Wa ghadan hisab wala amal. And tomorrow you will be held accountable, but you can't act upon the teachings of Islam anymore. It's done. You're only going to be held accountable. Don't be like this individual that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he speaks about. That he seeks the hereafter, he desires the hereafter. How? He just sits at home, he doesn't strive, do nothing for it. But at the same time, there's always time for repentance as well. As if he's going to grow younger, like he's going to become younger. No. Don't have this childish perception of time. It's very important that we don't have that. Children, you tell them, look, you're going to get the ice cream tomorrow. According to them, tomorrow equals what? Never. I know they stop crying, I want the ice cream now, right now. Why? Because it equals never. We like that child, unfortunately, sometimes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, you're not going to live for more than 80 years. Yeah? Seek repentance. Change that one habit. And that's if you're promised the 80 years. Go to the graveyards, you'll find out that a lot of people, they weren't even promised those 80 years. In other words, you're not even promised tomorrow. We should take this discussion about habits. In another narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he said, "Tadinu anfusakum bitanki al-'adat." You should humble yourself by quitting your habits. وَقُودُهَا إِلَى فِعْلِ الطَّاعَاتِ. And make sure you drag it towards the acts of obedience. Acts of obedience. What does it mean that you should drag it toward acts of obedience? That you don't know all the benefits of it. In other words, you're not a philosopher about that action, so you drag it towards it, but you know it's good for you. You have some general knowledge about it, it's a good thing to do. That's sufficient. That's sufficient. But you should humble yourself. Why is it that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells us to belittle ourselves or humble ourselves by quitting habits? That's because if you don't get the strength to quit habits, you do not belittle yourself and you don't become selfless. Let me tell you something. Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, he promised us a heart which still has some me, myself and I that resides within it is not able to see closeness to Allah. That's it. You should become selfless as a human being in order for you to see closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, he told us that the heart of every human being is the haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't allow anybody to enter the heart. Why? Because it's the sanctity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It belongs to Allah. Nobody else is allowed inside. But if we allow our ego inside, obviously we can't see closeness to Allah. And this is because of it. Because we don't humble ourselves by overcoming the different habits that we have as human beings. In another narration, غَيْرَ مُدْرِكِ الدَّرَجَاتِ مَنْ أَطَاعَ عَادَاتِ. A person is not able to experience or to perceive the lofty positions if he is obedient to his bad habits all the time. Are we talking about an Islamic lifestyle, yeah? We want to see closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, become closer to Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, walk in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt, get closer to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Find that one single habit, just one single habit, not 10, not 1,000, one single habit, on Ashura, sacrifice it. Like Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, he sacrificed his most important attachments, his most beloved on the day of Ashura. You find that one single habit and sacrifice it the same way. You can't cry 10 nights for Abu Abdullah alayhi salam and his sacrificing his most beloved. And at the same time, you can't even quit a sin or two, for example, or a habit, or one habit or two habits. Used to backbite somebody, quit it. Disrespectfully, you were speaking disrespectfully to your parents, for example, quit it. Listening to music, quit it. Shedding tears for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who sacrificed everything, himself, his children, his family members, his sister taking us captive, and then we expect to receive the shafa'ah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of judgment. When we show up and you couldn't even quit listening to a song, you're going to feel embarrassed. Imagine standing in front of a person who sacrificed everything. And then he asks you, you couldn't even quit listening to music. Like, unfortunately. Well, why were you shedding tears then? Were you crying for me or yourself? You should be crying for yourself, not me then. Because it wasn't me that you actually saw getting closer to. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, 70 different ways he used to seek repentance. 70 different ways. We have narrations about it. The Prophet ﷺ, from every majlis he would get up. Every time he was sitting in the gallery, they saw the Prophet recite Tawbah 25 times. Every single night in his Salatul Layl 70 times. Salama, when she came in, she saw the Prophet ﷺ was shedding tears and repenting. She was scared. The Prophet looked at her and asked her, Salama, what happened? She said, if you seek repentance like that, what about us then? What about us then? You're the most beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're seeking repentance like this? How should we feel then? The Prophet ﷺ answered Salama. He said, my brother, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam, he forgot about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a moment and look at the bala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he put him through. He forgot about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a moment. for a moment. Not that he committed a sin, he just forgot about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a moment. And look what happened, the bala he went through. Stuck in the belly of the whale for I don't know how long. He said, of course I seek repentance. Of course. To remind myself, to belittle myself in front of my Lord. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. What about us then? With all our shortcomings and the sins that we commit all the time. So the first thing we should do in order for us to establish an Islamic lifestyle, find the strength enough to break bad habits. How? Seeking repentance. Wallahi ma yanju mina dhanbi illa man aqarra bih. Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he swears by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person is not saved from the effects of his sins except if he admits or acknowledges his shortcomings. Simple. Wallahi ma yanju mina dhanb illa man aqarra bih. Should acknowledge them. Why? That's the first step in order for you to break that bad habit. But at the same time, be like a sharpshooter. Find one habit and focus on that to begin with. How can you do it? List your habits to begin with. List your habits to begin with. And then you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will embrace you in the most beautiful way as well. It's not just a bit of discussion here. Like, oh, it's not that sweet. No, it's a sweet discussion. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran Himself, Inna Allah yuhibbu tawabin. He loves the people that seeks repentance. He will embrace you, and the pleasure that you will find in seeking repentance and breaking those habits, trust me, it will maximize your success, your feeling of happiness as well. That's why you see, when we come and shed tears for Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, it improves and maximizes our joy of life as well. It's not that we could become depressed. Why? Because we are not sitting with our own issues and relying on ourselves. We rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to solve the issue. The creator of the universe. Of course He will embrace us. But that's dependent on us actually striving and taking that first step in order to break that bad habit. Simple. Break that bad habit. Because then you'll find an attachment to Allah's beloved one. Just like the son of Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. Imam Hassan alayhi salam was amongst the most, if not the most, one of the most oppressed of the Imam alayhi salam after Imam Hussain alayhi salam. You see, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, if you compare him to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, true, he went through a lot of hardship and calamities, but at least he had a wife that was very loyal to him. They say, according to some narrations, that when they were walking back from Karbala towards Medina, Rubab would never sit in the shade. And when they asked her, why is it that you never sit in the shade? She said that because I saw that they left Imam Hussain alayhi salam in the sun. They left Imam Hussain alayhi salam in the sand under the sun. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he had a wife that poisoned him. He didn't have a loyal wife like Rubab. And then when you go to Baghi, your heart breaks. You can't even send a salam to the Imam. You can't even light a candle next to his grave. It's all flattened out. And then you got these human animals like keep pushing you, telling you to walk, don't stand still. Can't even send a salam comfortably. When you go Karbala, you see the golden dome, your heart, you find tranquility in your heart. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he didn't have that. Not only that, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he wasn't there in Karbala. When Abdullah, he saw Imam Hussain alayhi salam in the battlefield. And he kept running towards the battlefield, and Sayyidah Zainab kept pulling his arm. But he stopped running towards the battlefield after he told Sayyidah Zainab to let go of his arm. And after Zainab, she ran after him. He told Sayyidah Zainab salamun alayha to go back to the tents, not to look. Abdullah was only 12 years old. According to Sayyid ibn Tawuz, it is narrated that he was only 12 years old. When you see a 12-year-old young man, he's not even big enough to wear an armor, to wear a shield or carry a sword. So when he saw that they were attacking Imam Hussain alayhi salam, he threw himself on top of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He wasn't big enough to defend Imam Hussein alayhi salam, so he became his shield. So this mal'oon, he walked over and he struck Abdullah ibn Hassan. So his hand was dangling. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he embraced him, Abdullah. He said, Ya Abdullah, have patience, soon you will be reunited with your father. Have patience, soon you will be reunited with your father. I read in one of the narrations, inshallah it's a lie. Inshallah that it's not authentic. But it was written in that narration that when one of these mal'ooneen, these cursed ones, they shot an arrow at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, so he fell back. While he was hugging Abdullah, one of these mal'ooneen, he walked over and he beheaded Abdullah. While Imam Hussein alayhi salam was hugging Abdullah, one of these mal'ooneen came and beheaded him. Imagine if Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he saw this, he was there to see this. But at least Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he had his nephew next to him. Or Abdullah, he had Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he had his uncle. And he was martyred in the lap of his uncle. They say the only individual which blood got mixed with the blood of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura was Abdullah ibn Hassan. They were killed exactly on the same spot. Because he was lying on top of him. When this mal'oon, he walked over and he sat on the chest of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And he started cutting through the throat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But where was Abbas? Where was the nephews? Where was his son Ali al-Akbar? At least Abdullah had his uncle. Imam Hussein alayhi salam was alone. There was only one person watching Imam Hussein alayhi salam being beheaded. And that was Lady Zainab salamullah alayha. When she shouted out to this mal'oon, do you know whose chest you're sitting on? Don't you have any shame? Do you know who used to kiss this throat of his? Don't you have any shame that you're cutting through the throat which Fatima bint Muhammad used to kiss all the time? Allah la'natullah ala qawmi al-zalimeen. صلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.